knowing them to be great guys, or even sometimes seeing what happens when Dr. Drew says something and the Twitter sphere goes ballistic and talking about what a bad person he is or what have you. Yeah, when you get to know almost anybody, you look at them as a person rather than an idea. And we need to look at people as human beings, not ideas or representatives of ideas. And it always helps when you're exposed. I personally, this may sound like a sidebar, but I grew up playing football. I played 10 years of organized football. I played with every different kind of human being, except the Jews, actually, Ben.
Females?
Maybe the holder.
Females?
Yeah.
Yeah, the punter.
Yeah, they cheered. Yeah, it was awesome. So I got exposed to everyone and realized that everyone who came from every different neighborhood was, there for one reason, and that was trying to win a game, and I think it helped a lot in my view of life. And then later on, when I stepped on a construction site, I got the same thing again. So I do feel like surrounding yourself with diversity in ideas as well as skin color is a good thing.
We're trying to give everyone a little extra time, but we can't go too much longer. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Corolla, thanks for coming.
Thank you, man with the tan from Florida.
Try my best.
You don't have to recognize him as the man from Florida. We can all see where he hails from.
Yeah, no, well, I appreciate that. It's hot there. We don't have the temperate climate that you guys have in LA, so it's 95 and heating right now.
Well, it's dry, but there are a lot of blowhards there in LA, so there's a lot of hot wind blowing around.
So what do you've kind of come here. We appreciate it. You look at this experience. How do you view kind of what goes on in Washington as potentially being able to help stand up for free speech? Because we get involved in things, a lot of times we make it worse.
I hosted a show called Loveline for over a decade, and I had a very unique perspective because I was able to talk to troubled kids, teenagers, 2 hours a night for a decade, and I really got to learn something about young people and how they work and what works and what doesn't work. And, people say, well, you're not a professor, you never read a book, you never went to college. How are you an expert on this? And I say, well, I'm a journeyman carpenter as well. I've never read a book on carpentry. And who would you like to build your house? Someone who read a book on it or someone who just did it every day for over a decade? And I learned that all of these problems that we're talking about, free speech, discrimination, hatred toward other people, and drug addiction, violence, crime, it all stems from the family. And when the family is intact, much of this stuff just goes away. You don't have to legislate it away. It just goes away because people are brought up in intact families with decent, caring parents, whatever their color, whatever their background is. And then they produce little decent individuals who go off to college or a job, place of work, and they don't need to be coached up, and they don't need to be legislated, and they don't need to be bloviated by people like us. They grew up in an intact family. So my feeling is all the stuff we're talking about is at the outside of the rim. The hub is the family, and the discussions should center around the family and who is creating these people who think it'd be a good idea to take a baseball bat to the window of a Starbucks in their community.
Well, I think that's well put, and if we could deal with that core, the free speech stuff, and a whole host of other problems would go, and that's better than any tax bill or anything else we could be doing, and obviously it's not going to be government's role per se, it's a societal thing. But Mr. Chairman, thanks for your leadership on this issue.
Well said. We'll close out here with a few questions, but first, I do want to recognize Ms. Taylor-Dumpson as well. Obviously, what happened to you on campus is wrong, should not be tolerated, and is just disgusting. But we appreciate you overcoming that, and the fact that you're the student government president. Someday you're going to be sitting up here doing the same kind of hearing, and we look forward to those days in the future as well. But my guess is at American University they probably had some diversity training. They probably had some bias training. So maybe this gets to the point Mr. Corolla made earlier. It's not all the bias training and diversity and these tests kids have to take now, or students have to take now. Do you? Well, let me just go to Mr. Shapiro. Do you think this the bias training is something that is actually helpful?
I don't think it's effective.
I think that, in fact, it tends to alienate a lot of the people who feel like, I'm not a racist, why am I being forced to endure the implication that I'm a racist and I have the necessity of undergoing bias training?
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me that either Americans, their bias training is not any good, or it's just largely probably not.
People who tie nooses around bananas are not going to be dissuaded from doing so by bias training. They're garbage human beings.
To Mr. Carolla's point, right? It's a lot more about what kind of background and belief system they bring to the university.
I agree wholeheartedly. That starts at home. Anyone who's been in the corporate world knows you have to have sexual harassment training as well, and the cases of sexual harassment have probably gone up tenfold since the training began. So I don't see any direct line from training to effective application of it.
In fact, it could be almost the converse, right?
I feel it is, yes.
But Mr. Carolla also talked about the positive impact of actually working together with a diverse group of people, and I think that's what we have to do. We have to bring people together in education and work and other contexts.
You know, and it's been my experience. Some of the strongest advocates for left policy, and I always use the example. One of my good friends is Dennis Kucinich. And you cannot get farther apart than Jim Jordan and Dennis Kucinich. But we have respect. And a lot of times where we really work together is on civil liberty issues, these kind of issues. That's why I so appreciate this panel we have here today. I mean, that's how it's supposed to work. So there was talk earlier about a speech code. It seems to me the speech code is the one that's right behind me. Right? Isn't that the speech code in America, the First Amendment itself? Speech code and common sense, as Mr. Kroll has talked about. So, Mr. Shapiro, your thoughts on a speech code, or shouldn't it be the First Amendment? Shouldn't that be sufficient?
Absolutely, and I think that we're moving into very dangerous territory when we start identifying speech as violence. And that I think is what's happening more and more often in our politics. I think it's happening on college campuses. When you start saying that what you say offends me to the point where I'm going to treat it as violence, then we are moments away from an actual violent conflagration, and that has to stop immediately.
Do you think, Mr. Shapiro, that some of the things we have seen from the federal government are contributing to what I would describe as crazy situation we see on many campuses, situations you've had to go through and live through? Do you think some of the things that the federal government has done are chilling free speech on college campuses? And specifically, and frankly, what prompted my renewed interest, or greater interest, I should say, in this series of hearings we're having on the First Amendment was a few years ago when we discovered that an agency with the power and the ability to intimidate and impact people's lives, the agency known as the Internal Revenue Service, was systematically and for a sustained period of time targeting people for their political beliefs. Do you think that has some chilling impact on what may in fact be happening what is in fact happening on our college campuses?
I mean, sure, when people have an enormous amount of power, whether it's at an administrative level or at the federal level, they tend to use it in ways that benefit the side that they control, and that has to. I mean, I think you've seen this. It's a completely different topic, but I think you've seen this in the context of how a lot of the sexual assault hearings are taking place on campus now, where they're taking place under Title IX auspices, and they don't actually follow any sort of constitutional due process procedures. That's an area where the federal government has gotten involved and really overridden individual rights. And listen, nobody is in favor of sexual assault. Everyone wants to see rapists prosecuted. But we need to come back to some sort of rational standard of application, not just what we wish we could do in some sort of utopia.
Just two final points. Mr. Raskin raised the point earlier that the majority party invites 4 of the witnesses, that the minority party invites 1. That's standard practice. I would point out of the 4 witnesses, I think probably 4 majority witnesses, probably 2 come from the left on the political spectrum. Mr. Shapiro hasn't exactly been a fan of the current administration, and I don't know exactly what Mr. Carolla's. I would think he's fairly libertarian, but I don't know if he's Republican or Democrat. So we tried to invite people who believe in the sign that's behind me. That's what we tried to do. And people who are willing to defend it, who are willing to say that this is paramount to the American experience and who we are as a nation. And that's what this series of hearings that we're undertaking in this committee are all about. So final question is to the heckler in the middle. When's the movie coming out again?
No safe spaces. Dennis Prager and myself have gotten together to do this subject, but the 86-minute version of it, not the 477-minute version. Yes, my bladder's very angry at you. Yeah, I think it's coming out mid-early 2018, so look forward to that.
Well, we look forward to it as well. I want to thank each of you for being here today and participating in this important hearing, and we look forward to having more. And frankly, what we're going to do, we may invite some of you back, but we certainly want to have some of the students, maybe even some of them who are in the room. A gentleman from Alabama, I'm sorry.
I just want to thank the students for coming, and I hope you look back on this and count this as one of the best days in your education that you've ever had. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. With that, we are adjourned.
Thank you very much.
It shall be even.
Well, that was enlightening, wasn't it? Oh, my parents are going to be so proud. Oh, if only they were alive. Wait a minute. Oh. All right. We'll bring in Tucker Carlson first. Paranormal. Alice Cooper. Paranormal. New album from Alice Cooper. Hey, it's been a while, man. The king of shock rock is back. 12 new songs, including Paranoid Personality and the new single, Genuine American Girl, which features the original Alice Cooper band back together, man. Plus, 6 live Cooper classics. Catch him on tour coming up August 12th through September 10th. With Deep Purple and the Edgar Winter Band. Oh, man, I may be there. I love them bands. Paranormal, available now at Best Buy. That is Alice Cooper, King of Shock Rock. Paranormal, available at Best Buy now. And as promised, it's time to talk to Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is on the blower. Tucker Carlson Tonight is the name of the show. Weeknights, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 out here on Fox News, taking over for O'Reilly and doing an amazing job. Good to talk to you, Tucker.
Well, thanks for having me.
I really enjoy your show. My wife really enjoys your show. And I was enjoying you from way back in the day when you were wearing bow ties and showing up on Bill Maher's show and giving them what for. And I remember thought, this guy's smart and he's spirited. And it was back during a time when folks on the right or more conservative folks didn't really argue very well.
Of course.
Well, most people hate to argue. They don't really want to debate. They want to dismiss you as immoral and kind of